In his absolute final moments, as the clock ticked past 5:49 p.m. on May 5, 1821, Napoleon Bonaparte, the once unconquerable emperor, didn't see the face of God or a grand vision of the afterlife. His eyes, staring into the dim light of his small room on St. Helena, locked onto a specific, heart-wrenching image from his past, and with his last gasps, he whispered, "France, the army, Josephine." It wasn't the heroic battlefield he might have wished for, but a final, deeply human reflection on the pillars of his life, his nation, his power, and his lost love. For 6 long, agonizing years, the man who had redrawn the map of Europe lay captive on a tiny, volcanic rock in the middle of the South Atlantic. St. Helena was less a prison and more a slow-motion torture chamber. The island air was perpetually damp, laden with the stench of salt and volcanic ash, a stark contrast to the palaces and grand boulevards he once commanded. His liver disease, perhaps compounded by the arsenic used in the green wallpaper of his dreary Longwood house, was relentlessly consuming him from the inside. This was not the quick, glorious end of a warrior, but a drawn-out, ignoble surrender to mortality itself. The wind howled constantly, a relentless dirge for a life that had once been an unstoppable force. As April turned to May, the illness tightened its grip. Napoleon's body, once a tireless engine of conquest, was now racked with unbearable pain. He drifted in and out of consciousness, his mind a fractured mosaic of past glories and present suffering. His few remaining loyal companions, including his valets Marchand and Saint-Denis, hovered over him, their faces etched with despair. They witnessed the flicker of recognition in his eyes, followed by the distant stare of a man lost in a private internal battle. What terrors, what regrets truly haunted the mind of a fallen emperor in these final failing hours? The delirium intensified. On May 4th, he spoke with startling clarity, dictating his will, leaving instructions for his son, a boy he barely knew, but whose future represented his only true legacy. Then the real world began to recede, replaced by the vivid, chaotic landscape of his memory. His voice grew weak, his words slurred, but the themes were unmistakably military. He shouted commands, envisioned cavalry charges, and described the movements of troops on spectral battlefields. He was no longer on St. Helena, he was back in the saddle, leading his men. It's often said that a person's life flashes before their eyes in their last moments. For Napoleon, it wasn't a highlight reel, but a desperate final engagement. He relived Austerlitz, Marengo, Jena, the thunder of hooves, the roar of cannons, the desperate cries of soldiers. Yet, amidst the chaos of war, another image emerged, a softer, more intimate whisper. Josephine. The woman he loved, divorced for the sake of an heir, yet who remained the enduring passion of his heart. How many of us, facing our own end, would find our thoughts turning to those we loved, even those long lost? If you've ever pondered the true weight of a life, consider what Napoleon chose to revisit. Share your thoughts on what drives these final reflections in the comments below. Then came the morning of May 5th. A violent storm raged outside, mirroring the turmoil within his failing body. The air was thick with the smell of death and medicinal concoctions. He entered a deep coma, his breathing shallow, labored. His last discernible words, those fragmented utterances of France, the army, and Josephine, escaped his lips in the pre-dawn hours, painting a poignant triptych of his existence. He wasn't giving a final speech, he was simply seeing these figures, these forces that had defined him. It was a vision not of defeat, but of essence. As the afternoon light faded, the great general's fight finally ended. A single tear, or so it was reported, escaped his eye at the exact moment of his passing. The storm outside began to subside, leaving an eerie calm. The man who had once held Europe in his grasp died alone, an exile. His final thoughts, a mixture of his grand public persona and his most intimate private longing. His legacy is one of unparalleled ambition, military genius, and profound impact. But in that small, damp room, his final vision revealed the undeniable human core beneath the imperial facade. It showed us that even the mightiest conqueror is, in the end, just a man, grappling with love, duty, and the echoes of his own extraordinary journey. What other historical figures do you believe faced such a profound, yet deeply personal final vision? We're always seeking more stories of their last moments.